Launch of Mosaic Vision, an anthology of poetry by Vaijayantee Bhattacharya. I would like to thank our audience who by their very presence add a lot of value to this event, and of course I would like to thank our esteemed chief guest and panelists for their esteemed presence. So before beginning the event, I would like to read a small description about our protagonist, our poetess for this evening, Ms. Vaijayantee Bhattacharya. Since 2010, she has worked as an editor, writer, poet and blogger with over 14 years of experience in the print and publishing media, both in India and Bahrain. She has also worked as a PR professional with the Kempinski group of hotels in Veritas PR, etc. While in India, she has worked with internationally acclaimed companies like Macmillan India Limited and Sage Publications India Private Limited, besides freelancing for various popular Indian dailies like The Statesman, Hindustan Times, right from her university days. In Bahrain, she has worked as an editor for various magazines and newspapers like the Bahrain This Month, Weekender, Sabia Mayadeen, Bahrain This Week, and so on. In the course of her career, Vaijayantee has conducted several high-profile interviews for several celebrities, industrialists, actors, artists, ambassadors to countries, besides writing about travel, food, lifestyle, architecture, and so on. Vaijayantee was born and raised in Kolkata, where she completed her Masters in English from the University of Calcutta and a postgraduate diploma in journalism and mass communication from Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan. She then moved to New Delhi with her family, always an active participant where she worked for 7 years with the publishing media before shifting base to Bahrain, where she lives with her family currently. Always an active participant in debates, extempore, creative writing, music and dramatics, right from her school days, Vaijayantee has won several contests and awards in these fields and has also been the Literary Society President of Loreto College, Middleton Row, Kolkata, from where she has completed her bachelor's degree in English honours. Vaijayantee had also been invited for a familiarization trip to Malaysia in 2015 by the ambassador of Malaysia of Bahrain to visit the country and write about its people and culture. A mother of 6-year-old, Vaijayantee enjoys every bit of the magic of motherhood and is about to start her own firm in content development, PR, branding and advertising. So can we have a huge round of applause? She's sitting at the back. Okay, so we are anyways inviting you to the front. We will be. Vaijayantee Bhattacharya's first anthology of poetry that depicts her perceptions, experience and emotions like a tapestry of colorful threads, intertwined at times and at times stark and contradictory. The poems, varied in their subjects, themes and tones, form a beautiful mosaic pattern that helps the reader get a wholesome understanding of a woman in today's world, delighted and distraught by the travails of the times. So this is the book in a synopsis. We'll get to have a detailed description about the entire experience and everything in a short while now from our panelists, chief guests and the poetess herself. Prior to that, I would now like to we are indeed privileged and honored to welcome our chief guest for this evening, Shri Jawhar Sircar. We welcome you on board, sir. We are proud to welcome our esteemed panelists for the evening, Srimati Sunanda Mukherjee, Chairperson West Bengal Commission for Women, Dr. Sanjukta Dasgupta, Professor, English Department, Calcutta University, and poet, Mr. Shahenshah Mirza, descendant of Nawab Wajid Ali Shah and a very prominent social and green activist, Ms. Saira Halim, educator, activist and poet, Ms. Saheli Mitra, journalist, author, poet and columnist. We are so very privileged to have you all on board. Can we have a round of applause? A louder one, please. We documents largely the significant experiences, people and places that have left indelible impressions in the poet's mind, resulting in a few poems and perceptions bound between the covers of the book. Some journeys are internal and some cover countless geographical miles in between them. This film is an attempt at capturing on celluloid the journey of the poet Vaijayantee Bhattacharya from her city Calcutta and back to it, and all impressions in between that have brought the soul to this book. Here before us today, as we witness the birth of a book, a tribute to the city.
Kolkata is mother, Kolkata is home.
বড় মমতায় আমাকে কোলে তুলে নিয়েছিল সেই শহর এই কলকাতা। আন্তরিকতা ছাড়া এই শহরের মূল নারীকে ছোঁয়া যায় না। কলকাতার প্রতি তোমার ভালোবাসাও আন্তরিক হোক, আশীর্বাদ সহ বাবা।
I think I've inherited my love for writing from my parents, especially my mother, because I have formed remembrances of how she would snatch some time out of her busy life as a homemaker and grab a copy and just jot down whatever came to her mind.
I would now request Dr. Sanjukta Dasgupta, Professor, English Department, Calcutta University. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir. Can we have Mr. Shahenshah Mirza, descendant of Nawab Wajid Ali Shah and a social and green activist, to come. Louder round of applause. Thank you. Thank you. I would now can we have Miss Saira Shah Halim, educator, activist and poetess, to kindly come up. Ma'am, if you could, yeah. Friends, a little louder. Such a beautiful evening we have. The weather and the season and everything keeping in mind. Can we have Miss Saheli Mitra, journalist, author, poet and columnist, to kindly come up.
My wife had a big laugh when she heard that I'm going for a poetry session because we know each other for about 45 years, and she knows that I normally stay away from poetry. I have this alibi that I'm much too logical to get into poems. But then I was most impressed at this lady whom I met just now, Vaijayantee, at her passionate request that I should be there and that I would manage to understand what she has written. I went through her book and it was a very pleasant surprise to me. You know, every generation has its own sense of values and own sense of looking upon itself and the others in completely different lights. We have a feeling that there's a lot of superficiality going on now, not only with any particular generation, but with the world at large, where we see a lot, but we hardly observe. We communicate a lot, but at a very shallow level. There's a lot of volume that is being churned out, very little depth, if I may put it. There's a lot of impressive amount of expressions that come out, but you still don't get the intensity with which we would talk to each other over a cup of tea and a thin Arabic biscuit. It just doesn't seem to be there. It's not the fault of any particular person or landscape or a city. It is just that the world has moved on. And as we move on, we realize that an SMS can never be a substitute for communication. It can just be a link, a temporary link to update ourselves. And yet all the time when the four of us get together, we talk for 10 minutes and then all of us grab our respective comfort machines to see what the outer world is saying. In this context, for someone who belongs very much to this generation, who have observed and internalized so much feeling, I was going through the whole range. It starts from her feelings about on different subjects, which I guess is the stuff from which poetry is made. It not only covers the intensity with which she has seen them and internalized these experiences, it requires a lot of skill to articulate them, to articulate feelings. I remember I was told when I started writing first, and I'm still keeping on trying to reach some level, that the longest walk is from the thinking couch to the writing table. Longest walk is from the thinking couch to the writing table. Everyone in this room has thought of huge novels, big poetries and maybe epic poems, but never got round to doing it. So my first congratulations to this young lady and a delightful husband and more delightful son, with whom I got acquainted. He reminded me of my son. Is that one has the temperament, one has spared, one has kept oneself so sensitive to the outer world, to feelings, and one has been able to internalize and articulate these feelings. When it comes to articulation, cut and dry people like us would prefer prose. It's much more safer. It starts with a capital and ends with a full stop. You know where to start and where to end, and a couple of commas thrown in between. For poetry, I think Sanjukta, she's seen me, we have sit there from college. She's younger, I mean, that we certify. I'm not going to drag her to my age, she's younger. So Sanjukta would perhaps understand the nuances of poetry where verses come in and where it's freed from verse. But for a person like me, I look at what I get and what is the feeling that emanates. There are a lot of thoughts put in. I don't want to take up the space of the panelists, and we have a very splendid panel here. Sanjukta, Saheli, Shahenshah and Saira. Have you noticed it's all S's down the line? So they are there. They have some point of which to get together. I leave the intelligent discussion to them, and on behalf of myself, our parents and all of us here, we are here to celebrate a very big occasion. There are few occasions in life that will remember all your life. Your marriage, for instance, your first day in school, your first day in college, your first book, your book launch, and so on this momentous occasion, let us all give Vaijayantee a big hand. A big hand. She chose to come to the city. She chose to come to the city to launch it. She could have done it in Bahrain and said, I've made an international launch, which would be true. And here again, I would say that the city seems to have, the city grows around all of us. Every city is more than a collection of buildings, localities and memories. It contains a soul. And let me tell you from the point of a person who has spent almost half his working life outside, that this city has a soul that reaches out. I have worked in many other cities, I have worked long enough, and I am not unnecessarily biased to this city. Many of us who have stayed outside the city have loved it, have missed it, have hated it, and still don't hold every facet of the city in a very high light. But at the end of the day, what matters to us is not an individual facet. What matters to us is a sum total of message, the sum total of endearment that the city reaches out to you. It is that endearment that matters. Calcutta has that quality, which is the reason why I've come back. And here, with these words, I end my little introduction. May God give you more strength and more talent. Thank you.
A very good evening to all of you who are assembled here today, braving the monsoon, And now we know that, well, the monsoon is not a deterrent. The monsoon encourages us to move out of the house rather than feel very trapped within the house. And for how long can you have khichdi and bhaja? Yes? So there is more than that. So from food to food for thought, and of course the pleasure of being here at the Oxford bookstore, where we routinely meet to launch one book or the other. But today it's a very special evening for me on many counts. The first thing is, Vaijayantee was a student of ours at Calcutta University almost 15 years back, I think. And when she called me and introduced herself, I was so excited. And just now I noticed that we also had the same school. So, of course, it was a great moment to be able to recognize a student now as a poet, as a creator of words rather than only an interpreter of words, which is what you do in the MA class, making wise cracks on other people's writing. But now she's writing herself. And that is what literature should be doing, the study of literature, to inspire one to create. Because there are often a feeling that what I'm reading and what I'm thinking, there's a bit of a gap between the two. And it is this gap that the creative writer fills up. And that is what Vaijayantee has done. She may have read thousands of the most brilliant poems in the world, but she felt her own words had to be born on the page. And so, from the baby boy, the biological and legal son, there is another one, yes, who is entirely her own, absolutely the precious text that she has produced for us and called it Mosaic Vision. And in a world which is now somehow talking in terms of nationalism, exceptionalism, in terms of exclusivity, a Mosaic vision is about an inclusive vision. And that is precisely what her book does. And of course, she has identified, this is Vaijayantee's own panel topic that she sort of identified that we need to discuss today, and that is poetry a reflection of emotions recollected in tranquility or disturbance? What is its relevance in today's morbid world of prosaic reality? And Jawhar was referring to the fact that what he writes about is probably not poetry, but all of us, whether we write those short lines which are poetic, metaphoric, aesthetically more well-wrought in terms of use of words, but then what Jawhar also does is a lover's quarrel with the world. If you don't love, you can't write. And so all of us have that instinct of poetry when the prose gets excited into poetry. And that is precisely, I suppose, what everyone who expresses concern about the world and also about their subjective trials, tribulations, fascination, frustration, all of that expressed in Vaijayantee's poetry, where emotion recollected in tranquility. But you know, how many of you are from English departments here? Of course, immediately you will remember that those are words that are taken from Wordsworth's lyrical ballads. And yet, when you wrote those answers, you remember you were warned that if poetry is a spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings, once again Wordsworth, also the reminder was that poetry takes its origin from emotion recollected in tranquility. But when you are writing, of course, once again it becomes a very, very positive, energetic, creative, dynamic truth that spills out on the page. It is not only about passivity and tranquility. There has to be confidence, there has to be determination, there has to be concentration in the poetry one writes. and Vaijayantee's own poems, which all of you will read, I'm sure you will take home copies of her book. She talks about her own self. The sincerity that resonates through those lines in the poems are ones which remind us about the romantic poets, the personal, the subjective, the confessional, the nostalgic, the one, somebody who remembers memories and nurtures them in her mind, which is why she's renegotiating with the place of her birth. Poetry, in terms of disturbance, can be also internalized, can be about terrible things that happen to oneself. But all of us are warriors. All of us know that if we fall, we have to stand up. And it's not only about protest, propaganda, nationalism, patriotism, which are also parts of what poetry is all about. But in this case, in Vaijayantee's case, these poems are very intimate and deeply subjective, and also very, very easily comprehensible because of that very, very felt urgency in the use of words. Deeply emotional, and the grace of the English language is captured in her poetry. You don't feel as if you're reading a Bangla poem which has been translated into English. Yes? So when she writes her Bangla English poems, she writes and thinks in English. That is the impression I've got, and I hope that I am not wrong. So the poet herself will probably refer to the fact that whether there are some promptings about this, because we can go back to the Bengal Renaissance, and there was a time when people were people were advocated to think and speak and dream in English. Yes? So I don't know what your dreams are about, in which language you dream, and I personally have never recorded mine. So I get a lot of people from all over the world, so over there, and I've never really noticed what language my dreams are enacted. So I would just want to again look at this, because now all the panelists will be speaking about it, that poetry also, this was what Wordsworth had said way back in 1798, and then comes Percy Bysshe Shelley, maybe a favorite poet of some of you, who says, poets are the unacknowledged legislators of the world. Which means that the poets set up their constituencies first and then ask for votes. Yes? And so that is Shelley. And Shelley was a rebellious poet. Yes? Shelley had that sort of a dynamism like his own, one of his best poems, like the West Wind. He was like the West Wind himself. So, but I will not go into my adulations about Shelley any more, but say, comes around 1919, after the First World War, arrives an American in England who writes an essay called Tradition and the Individual Talent. In that particular essay, he suddenly reverses everything that Wordsworth had said. And he said, poetry is not a turning loose of emotion, almost referring to a leaky corporation tap. Yes? Not a turning loose of emotion, but an escape from emotion. And it is not the expression of personality, but an escape from personality. And poetry is really an exploration into the psychic terrain of the creative mind. And that is what we will find in the poems of Vaijayantee and also in the discussions here. And I will now introduce, is Shananda Mukherjee here? Not yet. All right. So, can I start with Mr. Shahenshah Mirza, who is the great-great-grandson of Nawab Wajid Ali Shah, and all of you might remember Nawab Wajid Ali Shah from Satyajit Ray movie that you may have watched, Shatranj Ke Khiladi. Yes? Jab Chhod Chali Lucknow Nagri, that was the song referred to. And a dedicated social and green activist. He's a senior central government officer in the GST department. He's also associated with a few NGOs. Besides these, Mr. Mirza loves good food. Who doesn't? And music and traveling. The very best that you could pick. Yes. Welcome.
Before I start congratulating Vaijayantee for her book, I would like to say that one of the topics of today's panel discussion is poetry relevant? Today it's a rainy day in Calcutta. Today there's an important cricket match going on. In spite of that, so many of us have come over here. I think that answers the question. Poetry is very much relevant. I would like to congratulate this beautiful woman. I would like to congratulate this beautiful woman for writing such a fantastic book. At one level, we all think, we all visualize, we have imaginations, but very few of us can have the courage to pick up the pen and start writing. And being a mother, being a full-time office goer, she took out time to write poetry, and she has written such nice poetry. A big congratulations to you. And we hope that in years to come, she will produce many more books. To me, poetry is something very, very important. I think poetry is magic for me. Whenever I'm tired, I hear some poetry, and it energizes me. It gives me a new level of energy. It prepares me for the next day. It is a stress buster for me. Today's panel discussion is, is poetry a reflection of emotions recollected in Tranquility or Disturbance? This has been taken from, the great English romantic poet William Wordsworth. A lot of people do not agree with him. They thought that emotions are spontaneous, and if it is spontaneous, then it cannot be recollected in tranquility. But I think what the poet wanted to say was that during the course of our life, we have emotions which are important, there are emotions which are unimportant. The unimportant emotions washed away with time, and it is only the important emotions which get recollected, which get settled in our mind. And when we are in a good state of mind, when we are in a state of tranquility, we try to recollect it and produce it. William Wordsworth was a nature lover. Things like flowers, green meadows, rainbow would motivate him, would inspire him to write great poetry, great works. Different authors have written over a period of time, and the circumstances have been very different. Great Indian classic writers like Valmiki, Vasudev wrote their beautiful work when there were not much social upheavals, but they wrote fantastic work. Then when you come down to the last 100, 150 years, when we talk about war poets like Thomas Hardy, Rudyard Kipling, D.H. Lawrence, the world was going through a very bad phase. People were dying, people were getting uprooted from their motherland, there were bloodshed, people were turning refugees overnight. And these poets saw the world from a very close quarter and wrote beautiful work. In this context, I would like to say something about Wajid Ali Shah, the last ruler of Awadh. I'm sure all of us sitting over here must have seen a picture of Wajid Ali Shah. He's wearing an agartha with his left chest open. A lot of people have asked me why his left chest was open. Wasn't it obscene? Was it a style statement? But friends, that was not obscene. That was not a style statement. Among other things, Wajid Ali Shah was a great poet. And if he would not have been the ruler of Awadh, perhaps he would have been a great poet of Urdu and Persian. This was a symbolic act on part of Wajid Ali Shah, where he wanted to convey to the world that my heart is open. I would like to absorb the emotions, the feelings, the disturbances, the problems the world is facing. So it was a symbolical gesture on his part, and in his writing, you see that he had been able to successfully absorb all these emotions, all these feelings. When he was 26 years old, he wrote a romantic biography, which was something very, very rare for a person who is just 26 years old and he has just ascended the throne of Awadh. For 2.5 years, he was in prison in Calcutta's Fort William, and he was feeling miserable. He had lost his kingdom, he was depressed, his health was failing. But even under those circumstances, he wrote a beautiful poem which is called Husn-e-Akhtar. It is written in Persian and it is considered to be a masterpiece. It beautifully describes his sorrow. There have been many authors, many writers, many poets who have led a very difficult life. For example, the great legendary Urdu poet Mirza Ghalib. He was born in 1797 in Agra, and that was a time when British and East India Company had devious designs over our country. He lost his father when he was 5 years old. Then he married someone and they were blessed with 7 children, but unfortunately none of the children survived beyond infancy. He had an imperfect marriage, and in one of his writings he says that marriage is the second imprisonment. The first one is life. He had to survive on a meager pension, and because of his pension he had to come to Calcutta also. But in spite of all that, Ghalib wrote some of the most remarkable poetry one can find in Urdu and Persian. When he writes, it is very difficult, even for those students who have done their PhD, to find out whether Ghalib is referring to his beloved or he is referring to Almighty. The other poet that comes to my mind is the Pakistani legendary poet Shahenshah Mirza. He was nominated for Nobel Prize for Literature 4 times, but unfortunately he didn't get the prize. He also led a very difficult life. At one time, he had enrolled himself in the British Army, and then he was witness to the 1947 Kashmir War, in which he saw a lot of people die. He was in prison for 4 years, and after he was released, he went abroad. But Faiz Ahmad Faiz also wrote very beautiful poetry. So I think it is very important for a poet to absorb whatever is happening around him, to make a mental note, and whenever he is in a proper state of mind, whenever he is at peace with himself, to write down those lines. Coming to the second part, is poetry relevant? I think poetry is very much relevant. Over here I would like to narrate an interesting anecdote which happened with Justice T.S. Thakur. He retired as the Chief Justice of Supreme Court of India. At one time, Justice Thakur was the Chief Justice of Delhi High Court, and a hearing was going on. And after the hearing was over, Justice Thakur wanted to give a very long date. This date was after 6 months. And one of the lawyers of the petitioner was pleading with Justice Thakur that he should be given a short date. But Justice Thakur said that I have checked my diary and I can't give you a short date. And then he gave a long date. After the lunch break, during lunch break, Justice Thakur was walking down the corridor of Delhi High Court, and then he overheard the same lawyer narrating a couplet of Mirza Ghalib to one of his colleagues. The couplet says, "आह को चाहिए एक उम्र अस्र होने तक, कौन जीता है तेरे जुल्फ के सर होने तक." Loosely translated into English, it means a lifetime passes before a sigh shows its effects. Who would wait so long to see you fixing the tangles in your hair? Justice Thakur stood over there and he told that lawyer, "Do you know the entire ghazal?" So the lawyer said, "Yes, I know the entire ghazal." Justice Thakur said, "Please recite it for me." And this lawyer recited the whole ghazal. So Justice Thakur said, "Okay, you meet me after the lunch break." And this young lawyer had no idea what was going to happen. So after lunch break, when this young lawyer came to the courtroom of Justice Thakur, he said, you wanted a short date, I'll give you a date after a week. So that was Ghalib, that was poetry, and that was Justice E.S. Thakur. So it goes to show how relevant poetry is. Friends, I think poetry has changed its medium over the years. Nowadays we don't find people in large number going to bookstores like Oxford or Story or any other place and buying books. Now we have the freedom of reading it online. There are many poets, I'm being told, they have their own website. You can go to their website and read their poetry. Then you can see poetic symposium on YouTube. But the point is, poetry is still very much relevant. I know a lot of people, they're in high profile jobs and they love hearing old Hindi songs. Not because it has been sung by Mohammad Rafi or Lata Mangeshkar or Asha Bhosle. Well, that is true. You know, they had beautiful voice. But also because the lyrics were mesmerizing. The lyrics are very much valid even today. It's very much fresh. I think poetry can never die. Poetry was relevant many years ago, many decades ago. Poetry is still relevant and it will be relevant even after many years. Thank you very much.
Good evening to all of you. Firstly, thank you, Vaijayantee, for having me here. I'm in the midst of such great legendary people. Also, we have our chief guest, Mr. Sircar, Saheli Mitra, dear friend is here, Shahenshah Mirza, who's like a brother to me. So I think this is indeed memorable. Now, I think Shahenshah Bhai has already put in a lot of different facets towards writing poetry, and also we're going to hear Saheli, who's again a noted poetry. So let me add my 2 bits worth of what I feel. Yes, definitely poetry are thoughts collected in tranquility, because you cannot write in din, you cannot write, poetry is something that cannot be forced upon you. It's something that is spontaneous. It's instantaneous, you know, because in the middle of the night when I'm penning something, you know, I have this, you know, I need to pen this down. And if I wait till the morning, I'm feeling sleepy, that passion, that thought doesn't come again. So either you write it at that time and it can be a masterpiece, because you don't intend it to be a masterpiece, it's simply a reflection of your emotion. So I think poetry is the truest form of literature, because prose can be nuanced, but poetry is not. It's always, and I can say it, it's always nothing but the truth when you're writing poetry, nothing but the truth. So, going through Vaijayantee's works, I feel a lot of her writings are deeply personal. They come from a deeply personal space. Okay, it could be you're feeling anxious about something, or you're feeling deeply about an emotion. It could be motherhood, it could be every day we go through an entire gamut of emotions. So what I feel is that she's not actually weighted. It's all, check me if I'm wrong, I think it's unedited. Because, if you start editing your work, it will give a different dimension.
I would say it's a spontaneous.
It's spontaneous, absolutely. So, there are a lot of times, and there are a lot of poets here. I can see Amit and so many other people. I'm sure all of you will agree that if you edit a work that you've written spontaneously, it does not create that same magic that spontaneous poetry would create. Yes, nowadays we also we use poetry as ants, because end of the day we all are deeply political people as well. We have a political opinion. So we also use poetry as a form of reflecting your angst with what is happening all around you. It could be a political scenario, it could be a situation, and you feel prose would be a little boorish. It would not actually denote the right emotion. So what you do is you're feeling angry, and poetry becomes an outlet of that angst, and you write it down and you put it up. So yes, definitely poetry is, I would define it as the secret language of the soul, because it comes from here. It comes from a very personal space because I scribble every day, I write poetry, so I know you cannot fake it. It's either there or it's not there. You can pen poetry to your lover, to your husband, to your child, to nature, because you look at Wordsworth's work, you know, he was a pantheist, he used to write on nature, but you know it was never fake. He felt deeply about his ideology, so he penned it. You look at Rudyard Kipling, you know, and his poetry is so inspiring. You know, you get up in the day, you look at If, and you're feeling demotivated, you're feeling despondent. Just, you know, you run down that poem, If, you know, you can just stick it on a child's table and it works magic as an inspiration, you know, because my dad had gifted If by Rudyard Kipling when I was in school. And I did the same thing. I framed it and I gifted it to my daughter, and I said, Beta, whenever you're feeling down and your chips are down, you feel everything is over. Remember, it's never ever over till it's truly over. So you go through it and dust yourself off, read it, get up again, and the sun does shine. So poetry does that to you. It's magical. It comes from a personal space. Yes, you need to have, I would use a Hindustani Urdu word called mahal. You need to be in a mahal. You can't be writing, you know, when there's noise. You need that peace of mind, calm, when the entire world is sleeping. You know, most of the poetry that I pen is at 2 a.m., 3 a.m. when the world at large is asleep. Because that's the time you can be true to yourself. There's no doorbell ringing. There's no superior who's calling you or emailing you at work. So you need, that's your sacred time. So I feel definitely poetry, yeah, you can, they are tranquil thoughts. And also, poetry can never be placid. Poetry is passionate, okay? Be it about a deep emotion, be it about a deep feeling, be it about a passionate cause. So poetry has that fire, it has that passion. So definitely if you ask me whether poetry can sustain itself, I like to talk about a personal experience. I'm one of the founding members of a poetry collective in Calcutta, and some time ago, a few months ago, we were trying to make poetry sustainable for living. So we say, how does poetry sustain itself as an art form? So we won, you know, this Microsoft Create to, you know, Inspire Fellowship, and we got a certain amount. We went to different colleges. We were trying to inspire the youth of different colleges how to pen poetry because they'd forgotten how to write it. I said it's not necessary. It has to rhyme. It can be blank verse, as long as there's a rhythm to it. You know, it can be lyrical. You don't have to make it sound like a rhyme. Just pen your thoughts. So I feel everybody must. If they aren't writing poetry, you don't know what you're missing out on. So do try, and I encourage everybody to pick up Vaijayantee's book because they're truly introspective and they come from a deeply personal space. And I would say kudos for collecting all your thoughts together because not an easy job. Your thoughts are fragmented, but to put across everything together and come out with an anthology is truly remarkable, and for that I must congratulate Vaijayantee, and we must give her a resounding applause for that. So ladies and gentlemen, can you please put your hands together and congratulate Vaijayantee once again, and thank you so much for having me here. You can have the last word. Or no, sorry, yeah.
Asked me to come over. I was in two minds. Almost, I think, 2 weeks back. Vaijayantee, was it? Yeah. Because but the minute she said that it's got something to do with poetry, then I realized I must be here. I mean, either in the audience or in the panel. Now why? Because somewhere I feel a poet is actually one who is born. You cannot create poetry. You cannot ask someone to write poetry. It is something which comes from within. I'm sure all of you who are here who write poetry will understand, and I'm sure Saira will definitely agree with me, that these are, they're kind of words which are within you, which completely start fighting on one fine morning, or maybe when you're returning home, when in the middle of the night, and they need a sort of expression. And that expression, the easiest form of expression, I should say, is writing a poetry. Because if you sit to write a prose, the number one, it takes a lot of time, and number two, it becomes pretty difficult to express, because if we consider even a child starts his life with short rhymes. Why? Why not with big stories? Simple. Because it's the easiest form of expressing yourself. It's the easiest form of communicating also. Now, as far as this tranquility part is concerned, I should say that I have never ever written poems in tranquility. Of course, other than a few. Because I hardly got time, so every time I used to return from office, sitting in the car, on my mobile, I used to write poems. And because I could store it there, I used to WhatsApp it either to my husband or to my 14-year-old son. So that is how my poems got stored. But yeah, there have been times when I have written in the middle of the night, and Saira knows it. Because once upon a time it so happened that when that child, that terrible picture of a child in the Syrian war was there, she was just writing a poem, I think, in the middle of the night. I think it was around 2 or 3, and at that moment I was also writing one. So it's, we were both writing, because that picture had created such an impact on me. I felt that if I don't write, then it's going to seep into me, that kind of I don't know, that sorrow. I had to express it off. It is not just sorrow that I express through poetry, but anything. I mean, if it is something to do with a woman, something to do with her rights, that is also there. Like I remember once I had written something on a woman who was breastfeeding her child in the middle of a parliament session, and it created a lot of criticism as well as praise, whatever. I mean, the social media was full with it. I posted it with a picture, and I was very, very taken aback, because within a day there were 1,000 shares of that poetry. So then I realized that, okay, I have hit a chord somewhere with a lot of people. Why were they reading it? Because somewhere they were supporting the fact that through a poem I could in very simple words, I could actually explain that, see, feeding a child is one of the most natural things. So what is all the cry and hue all about? So that's what poetry is to me, because I being a student, I have done MPhil in environmental biology. So I'm not a student of English at all. And I wish I was Sanjukta a student, because today when I heard her, and before also I've heard her on several panel discussions, I really realized that there's so much to learn about poetry, because I don't know them. But despite that, I'll say that is the beauty of poetry. Even if you are not a student of English literature, even if you have not gone into the nitty-gritties of poems, and you don't know why, what Wordsworth wrote, why, what, who wrote, despite that you can express yourself. I think that is the best part of poetry. You really don't need any kind of a formal training to write a poem. So that's all about it. And as far as Vaijayantee's poems are concerned, I was just going through them after I came here to Oxford. And what I realized is, she has been actually writing what she felt. Exactly what I'm trying to put in. Like, poetry becomes the best when it comes out from your spontaneous feelings. When it comes from within. Whether it be a protest poetry, you're protesting against something because you strongly feel about it. Whether it is a poetry on a romantic, dialogue. Whether it is a poetry which is expressing sorrow, joy. As long as it comes from within, what you're trying to say, it comes through the words of lines. I think that makes the best poetry ever possible. So, Vaijayantee, all the best for your book. Thank you.
Saheli Mitra, Mr. Shahenshah Mirza, and Ms. Saira Halim for being here today and joining me at this moment of great pride, honor, and emotions. I'm at a loss for words because I just became a mother again, and this is my second child. So I'm very happy, and I thank each one of you from the bottom of my heart for joining me here today and for making this moment so memorable. Thank you very much. And now, to read a poem which is significant to me at this moment. This is a poem which is an ode to my mother and also to my city, because my city is also my mother. The poem is titled Ma, and I kept it at that because mother wouldn't convey the same sentiments and emotions as Ma. You are the light in which I breathed my first, the darkness which nestled me to strength, the fingers that clenched me in a grip called love and held me unflinchingly from before the I in me was born, through moments when the I in me is battered and bruised, to when the I in me resurrects again. You are the warmth that surrounds me when I most need love, a love everlasting that needs no words, those eyes that weep in my pain and smile boundlessly in my joy. You are the wind that has egged me to soar higher, the calm that has doused all storms in me. I believe there is a reason why we belong to each other, Ma. A reason that can't be spelt, but only felt in overwhelming tears as I write this. You are me, turned inside out. My rough edges mellowed with your time. My protests merged in your prayers. The perfect cocoon I sheltered in before you pushed me to life. The perfect refuge I push myself to from life at its ugliest. Your womb is where my soul sleeps every night after its first waking. As you are me, turned inside out, and I am myself because you are with me. Thank you. Well, Dr. Dasgupta, I would also like to add my 2 bits on the panel discussion. I personally feel, Dr. Dasgupta has shared with you that the topic has been very close to my heart, and which is why I had thought of discussing this here today. You know, more often than not, when I tell people that I'm into poetry, I write poetry, I see raised eyebrows. Either in dismissal or in awe. It's like, oh, poetry. As if it's a language that needs to be decoded. As if it's something that we do not understand. But I don't think it is so. I mean, yes, we belong to a generation of SMSs, WhatsApp messages, and, hard-hitting headlines on TV channels, which in their own way are chiseled with master craftsmanship to, make the right kind of sound and the right kind of noise and grab attention. But at the end of the day, a small poem or a quatrain from your, early readers in a moment of relaxation, doesn't it uplift the soul? Doesn't it fill you with beauty, with joy? The other relevance of poetry that I find is, the shortness of it. And I'm not talking about Mahabharata and Ramayana over here, which are epics. But of course, the brevity of a text that conveys a meaning. And we come to the first part of the topic of discussion. Is poetry, a recollection of emotions in moments of tranquility or disturbance? I would say, to me, it's a cathartic process. It could be tranquility, it could be disturbance. When I'm adequately moved, there is something that wells up. It could just be the bliss of tranquility. I'm so happy that I'm peaceful for a while. I have no tension, I have no thought, no worries. And that creates in me, it wells up into a thought, a feeling, a reflection. And I need to jot it down. I need to write about it. So that is where I come from on poetry. And I would, reiterate what Mr. Mirza had said, that the fact that so many of you are here today, of course I know it is primarily from your love, for me. Most of you are family and friends, and I really, really am thankful to the others who have come in for the first time. But it's also because, as all of the panelists had said, poetry stirs something in the soul, and you just want to get up and go and listen to some poetry. Have a wonderful evening together. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks for the wonderful reading. I just wanted to ask you a question.
Yes.
At what age did you write your first poem, and what was the turning point that stirred you to write that poem?
My name is Kadambari. Kadambari, thank you for being here. Well,
Also a writer.
She's
wonderful. I'm so honored to have you here today.
my pleasure.
When you see, this is a question that takes me back to a visual image. A train to Chennai. We were traveling to Chennai. My dad used to take us for extensive tours of India. And it was a 3-day long tour. And I think I have a bit of that Wordsworthian love for nature. I just love nature and it affects me. I actually wrote a few lines, and which I actually set to tunes also. It was my first song, you could say, and the last one. So yes, and it was something as plain and simple as the tree is always green to me, the sky is always blue, the land is always true to me. And I don't remember the last line.
And then it was a never-ending journey.
Yes, and then I realized this is the way I breathe when I'm moved emotionally. When there is a stir in my soul, I need to write. And that writing naturally comes to me in verses.
Thank you so much. We really had an enlightening session, wonderful session, lovely session.
Thank you very much, Nilanjana. Well, for all my professionalism and making sure that I type out most of the stuff that I usually say, this came from my heart, and so I had handwritten it and tore out pages from a notebook so it would talk to you about the genuineness of what I'm going to say. My beloved Kolkata, Honorable Chief Guest, Mr. Jawhar Sircar, respected panelists, my family, friends, teachers, colleagues and associates. If all that I feel now and I'm choked with could be put in just 2 words, I would say thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you for being by my side at this extremely special moment of my life when my book is born and when I take birth as an author. I could muster the strength to come this far and stand here before you because of the faith that you all have had in me. My strength has been your unfailing love, support, encouragement and inspiration that I've received from each one of you, my family, friends, teachers, associates, colleagues, my city of joy. I would like to say a special thank you to a great team of writers, seniors and fellow journalists who have extended their support from across the miles. Mr. David Hollywood, Mr. Seamus Gallagher for their encouraging forewords, Mr. S.N.M. Abdi, Mr. Arshad Ali, Mr. Soman Baby, Mr. Kaunteo Sinha for their pre-publication reviews, Ms. Sulagna Mehta for connecting me to them, Mr. Ronnie Middleton, Ms. Payal Kumar, Ms. Uma Mani, Ms. Rohini Sundaram and David again for their warm words of appreciation and encouragement. It was a challenge to get everything organized at a short notice, especially when I just descended on the 24th of last month. I was extremely lucky to have a team of great players. Ms. Nilanjana Dey of Oxford Bookstore, Mr. Ritik Datta, filmmaker and my brother, who put together the documentary film, The Soul with the Mosaic Vision, Ms. Sufia Khatun, my PR consultant, all of whom have worked collectively towards the common aim of making this launch a success. My sincere and heartfelt thanks to our respected chief guest and panelists for heeding to my request and willingly extend their support by joining me at this moment of great pride and honor. Special thanks to Dr. Dasgupta, my former teacher in university, for agreeing to moderate this very intriguing and thought-provoking panel discussion. Last, but perhaps even before the first, my parents, husband, son, brother, in-laws, relatives, aunts, uncles, for being the wind beneath my wings. A very special thanks to the media, the press, and all those who have joined me here today, not knowing me in person. A special shout out to all my prospective readers. I had never realized that so much could be compressed in just 2 little words when really said from the heart. Thank you.